Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to Deadlock Weekly, the show where I've been bringing you Deadlock news for over a year, and this week we're getting into another night shift controversy. Pro players are getting into beef with prominent leakers on Twitter. All the rest of this week's Deadlock news, and obviously we're going to finish off reading your comments, so if you want to stay in the loop with all things Deadlock, be sure to subscribe. And so here we go again, guys, our first thing being night shift, but this week it's a little bit more clear-cut than some of the stories that we've talked about in the past few, and there's been some sweeping changes to the Urn, and that's where we start off. But the first thing to know about Pro Deadlock is that they fight for the Urn the second that it becomes available to pick up, and that's always been the case even before these changes, but there were a couple of big changes to the Urn that made what we're going to talk about possible. And the first one of those changes is now that the comeback Urn, instead of being picked up over in a side lane, it now gets picked up very close to your base, meaning that now instead of running it from an outside lane back to your base, you now need to run it from your base to an outside lane. And the second important change is that the team who has the comeback Urn has a flat name another guy who could look at a number written down on a screen, 35, and just say 40. 35% damage resistance when they're near the Urn. They get 35% damage resist anytime they're near the Urn. And when you hold the Urn during the reset window, which is every 5 minutes, so at minute 15, 20, 25, it's not actually going to reset the Urn state. It would keep it as a comeback Urn. And so as long as they held the Urn and were holding on to it, and they would just let it run back right to their walker essentially, because that's where the new spawn location is. But now that we've explained the mechanics, back to that night shift match, the melee creeps, they threw the first 10 minutes of the match in order to guarantee that they're gonna get a comeback Urn. And they secured it as soon as they could at minute 15, and they never made any attempt to deposit it for the rest of the game. They then used that 35% Urn resistance to deathball wherever they wanted to and to stomp any team fight, even with them being down souls. 35% damage is an insane buff. And so they even took a mid boss uncontested in under 20 minutes without even getting a kill beforehand because the floormen just didn't even want to fight it. They just watched them take mid. And it was pretty clear that the floormen were very annoyed by this strategy. AVG said it was the worst thing you could have done. And Xeno said they chose not to do it in DSI because they might be banned by Deathy for doing it. And obviously that's not going to happen in night shift. So the melee creeps felt very emboldened to do this strategy, and their rationale was to expose it before the big night shift open that's ongoing this weekend. And one big piece of the puzzle that's worth realizing here is that, yeah, it's very easy for the floormen, melee creeps, FPS Lounge, the European teams to just gentleman's agreement say, hey, we're not going to do this. But once it gets into the open tournament that's happening this weekend, where a bunch of regular E6ers are going to be playing against the melee creeps, and they know that their only hope to win is by using some cheese strategy like this. And honestly, I kind of understand that reasoning, because again, it's not like they're abusing a bug or an unintended gameplay mechanic. It's just this absolute dog shit intended Urn mechanic that's borderline cooking the game, if I can just be straight up about it. The Urn is in a worse place than it was 2 weeks ago, but we'll talk about that more later on. And so honestly, I do kind of understand that rationale. Do I think it's cheesy and cheap? Yes, absolutely. But it's also functioning exactly as the mechanics were meant to. It's not like the Abraham situation where they were keeping a glitch under wraps to exploit it in a tournament. I know I didn't have a video up last week, and so I would have mentioned this if I did, but plenty of other people mentioned it as well. It's not really a secret that you could use the Urn resistances to get other things done, but holding it the entire game is kind of the next level of that I didn't think of. But like we mentioned earlier, Xeno even said that they were considering doing it, but chose not to. So it wasn't a secret strat for the real high-level players out there. And so that puts melee creeps between a rock and a hard place. So they did use a bomb to get out of, in fairness. They could either hope that no one was going to use this cheese against them during the 12K tournament, and then guys, melee creeps becomes the laughing stock of the community because they lost to a pug team, or they could do this, which I don't think this gets patched if they make forum posts about this, guys, instead of doing this on night shift, if I'm honest. And so yes, it's a very cheap and cheesy strat, but if it did not happen on Wednesday, it would have happened this weekend and ruined a tournament more than twice the size of night shift. And the floor fit by the floormen, no way around it. Giving up after 10 minutes of having to deal with this strategy and then getting mad on the server and the BM pauses is straight up loser shit. Like, no way around it. And in fairness to them too, guys, if I were in their shoes and this were happening to me in my MM game, I would just abandon the game. I would go play Civ 7 or something. New update came out. It's pretty good, by the way. I don't blame them for feeling that way. But we just had this whole kind of, is Deadlock really a pro esport discussion this week? And the community certainly made it clear how they stand, how they feel, rather, about that. And I totally agree with that. I completely agree that this is a 100% a real esport, but things like this are why that opinion gets any traction, because there are weird glitches like this, and this is how the players react when it occurs, instead of remembering that early access button that you clicked when you first played this game. Now, there are a lot of tweets. Basically, everyone in the community has an opinion on this, but what I think the important ones are, though, are the statements that both Ido and AVG made to Deadlock Intel on Twitter. Ido very firmly takes a stance that this game is fundamentally competitively broken.
What he was saying was basically 100% true. Like, everything he said about the Urn was right, which basically meant the game is broken fundamentally. That's what he was arguing. But because he said it in a very aggressive way, people were like combating him, and then it got messy, whatever. That's why I try and come off as neutral as possible on my streams, because it's more like a perspective versus like, this is my opinion. This is not an opinion. This is just a fact. This game is broken competitively. It does not work, and it hasn't worked for the last week.
While AVG agrees that the Urn is broken, he also places the blame on the melee creeps for not telling Night Shift their plan, and therefore having Night Shift in the position to once again having to come up with a ruling on the fly, and a ruling that AVG did not agree with.
My only issue with all of it is that if they wanted to get it patched, if they wanted to use the game as a statement, which is what they're claiming, what they should have done is they should have just told the TOs in advance, and they didn't even have to tell us, but if they just told ZP in advance, when I pause the game there and I DM ZP, I'm like, yo, man, what's the word on what's going on here? He would give me a clear-cut response that would actually indicate what the next move is, but he didn't actually have a clear response for me. They hadn't ruled on it yet, and eventually once they ruled, the ruling was that it's banned, but we have to continue from 0-1, which... I mean, to me, that doesn't really make any sense, right? Because if the strategy is banned, then obviously it just shouldn't be something that could have been used in the first place. But regardless, I don't really have an issue with the win or loss.
And AVG made a long tweet that's worth reading where he pretty much admitted fault and said he acted out of anger and frustration. And honestly, I totally understand that, guys. We mentioned it earlier, but someone replied to one of my tweets and said something along the lines of like, this is like a tush push happening and the other team forfeiting because it isn't fair. And I think that's a pretty funny description of the events. There are a couple things to know here as well, guys, then too. There is a ton of behind the scenes stuff that goes on here because these teams scrim all week and they had the opportunity to use this strap, but they didn't. And then also I pulled this screenshot from Crayon when he was discussing on his stream the rules in this controversy. And so now I don't actually know where this screenshot came from, because when I searched ZP's messages in the Night Shift Discord, he didn't say anything in any public channel on April 8th. So, and he's also got a different color roll from the screenshot that I have. Maybe it's an old screenshot, who knows? But given that Crayon is frequently on Night Shift streams and that the context of the clip that Crayon is speaking about it as they are the rules, I think it's safe to assume that these are them, and here's the screenshot. So I'll leave it up to you guys in the comments to decide if that strat was heavily warping gameplay. If I hear that this screenshot is wrong, but I mean, given the context, I can't imagine that it is. I'll obviously follow up. And then, guys, a little bit of a follow-up to that conversation. GabeFollower, who is maybe the most prominent Valve leaker, his name kind of tells you everything you need to know about his online presence, but I've known about him for years, since back when I was playing Counter-Strike, and he made this tweet that got a lot of attention in our community this week that says, it's funny to see competitive Deadlock players crying about the Urn update. The game is in a closed alpha. What competitive tournaments are you even talking about? Just give feedback, bruh. And what you'll see if you go through this string of tweets from GabeFollower is that he's incredibly out of touch with the Deadlock community. But there's one very astute observation that we're going to talk about in this tweet here, which I believe he was actually going back and forth with Listic in this exchange. Hard honing muscle and mental memory in constantly changing experimental games such as Deadlock. By definition, a waste of time, a fun waste of time. If you enjoy doing that, that's completely fine, but you have to understand what you signed up for. If you want to participate in tournaments under these conditions, be prepared to lose because of a random test that the developers decided to run on a large group of players. Cry on Twitter is free, but it's not the most productive way to get things to improve, and I'll keep doubling down on this and rage baiting because I got tired of seeing the same opinions that obviously doesn't represent, neither do I, the majority by being the loudest. And so, guys, this whole waste of time thing is just obviously not true. Sure, they're going to change the Urn. They're not going to remove mantle sliding. They're not going to remove IADs. There's so much little itty-bitty tech to this game that literally takes thousands of hours to understand at a professional level and be able to utilize it. And I think GabeFollower discounting that shows really how little of this game he's actually played. And yeah, man, they are pros also. They're getting paid to play Deadlock. That's the dictionary definition. But that said, GabeFollower has to seen what happened on Night Shift this week and laughed to himself a little bit. The middle part of the tweet about how a random test feature causing a team to lose and them not being prepared with how to deal with that is basically exactly what happened on Wednesday. The pro players really didn't do themselves any favors by taking their ball and going home. He said to be prepared for this sort of thing, a bad mechanic ruining competition, and 2 days later a pro team decides they don't want to play pro games because of that bad mechanic. So, I mean, you gotta laugh at the timing. But that said, I mean, yeah, pro team being a waste of time, man. I cannot wait for him to show up to a LAN or something and see these guys that are playing right now still be playing. That, because that is going to happen. Not all of them, but that is at least 50%, I bet, of the pros that are pro Deadlock players right now. If Deadlock becomes a big pro game, I guarantee you they will continue to be 5 years from now. They just have such a head start on literally everybody else. And so now, guys, let's actually talk about these urn changes. And the first thing that I want to mention is that I do actually like that they're actually experimenting again with how this fiasco has kind of gone. I have to imagine this is the end of them really experimenting with us. But it's felt like so long since they've actually given us experiments and not just, you know, like the private test server people. So, yeah, it's not great. Not great right now, but I do have all the faith in the world that the right balance is coming. The changes were really just a collection meant to specifically prevent this exact situation from occurring. Very, very hot fixing. It's clear to me, guys, that Valve has no clue what to do with the urn. They've been trying to balance it for its entire existence, and it's had multiple big reworks like the one we saw a week or so ago now. And so Valve is still figuring out what the urn is actually going to look like, and it doesn't seem like they're any closer than they ever have been, but these changes are pure hot fixes to the Night Shift fiasco. And like I mentioned, I do have all the faith in the world that they are going to find the happy place for this mechanic, but we've gone too far in the wrong direction. The urn was a complicated mechanic before, but now you need, like, literally, you need a textbook to understand all the mechanics and instances of things that can impact how the urn gets run now. They need to find a way to simplify this in one way or another. Alrighty, guys, and then I actually haven't even taken a look at the win rates yet this week, so we're going to do this together. Let's take a peek. Graves being number one is not what I expected. She's got a 6%, 7% win rate buff this week. Holy crap, holy. Do you think that they gave her a little bit of a buff? Or maybe that the game state benefits her a little bit now? That's wild. 7 is back up as well, but again, 7 and Victor are the two guys that we talk about a lot. You're always going to see these guys at the top of the win rate charts. Yamato is really surprising to see as well. Billy, I think Billy is a tremendous urn team fighter. I think that's what you're seeing there, that Billy is just really benefiting from the game state that it's in right now. Tremendous brawler. Same thing with Yamato as well, who's also had a buff, although her buff is not nearly as proportionate to the recent urn changes. Doorman complete collapsed for his win rate this week, a near 4% collapse. That to me reads, I'm trying to ult someone and then the 4 people that are standing around me right on the urn just kill me instantly. That to me is what that sounds like. Also, Rem getting a huge win rate increase as well. Nap time is an incredibly effective urn fighting ability. And then, guys, as we look at the bottom, it is some of our usual suspects. Venator is creeping back up. I expect him to continue to creep back up. I don't know, man. Like we talked about last week, that hero to me just does not feel nearly as bad as he normally does. And yeah, if you look at the kind of the cross-map trends, it really is these brawlers or big AoE teamfight abilities that are doing great. And then even when you go to Mo and Krill, right, he's had a win rate drop off this week because it's become so much about team fighting and about fighting at the urn, or at least it was this week. And so you're seeing your pick heroes like Mo and Krill, your doormen, fall off a little bit because getting those picks isn't nearly as impactful as having someone who can do a big AoE burst damage like even Billy could. So guys, as we crack on to our esports roundup, we're going to start with the DSI from last week, which the melee creeps did win, but I don't have a ton of info for you on it because I was actually up in New Hampshire at my old summer camp helping get started for the summer, and they kind of do like a little reunion every year there. So some photos I'll put up of that as well while we're talking here. And so yeah, I missed the DSI last week, but I did not miss Night Shift this week, where Psy did join Leviathan, replacing ZXC Bobby. That may have actually happened last week, guys, but I'm just bringing it in on the loop this week. And then, guys, it was Dimov's final week in NA as well. What a send-off for him. People were saying that they thought that he wasn't going to be even playing in this Night Shift. It's not super clear when exactly he's going to be stopping, but if I had to guess, once he's, I'm blanking, the Night Shift Open. Once the Night Shift Open is done this weekend, I have to imagine that's when he'll depart. You just shoot yourself in the foot if you leave for a new team the week right before a big tournament like that. Play with the team that you've been playing for the past 2 months, and you'll move on from there. Then, guys, in Europe, Leviathan did defeat Loki W, and we talked about the Floormen forfeit in North America. Then, guys, our comment today comes from Joey Ratatouille, who said, at the end of the day, like tournament series like DNS only exist because of viewership and watching experience. No matter what players agree to do together, at some point it becomes big enough to where you need to keep it watchable so that the tournament can continue to grow. If you let players do whatever, you set the precedent for that to happen in the future and just end up needing to draw the line somewhere. So I do think you have it a little bit backwards, Joey, if I'm going to be honest. I think that you need to remember, too, that why are the viewership even watching in the first place? It's because they have those pro players. It is a little bit of a chicken before the egg type of situation, but at the end of the day, if I got $12,000 together, I promise you that I could get Melee Creeps, Abraham's, Leviathan, FPS Lounge. I promise you I could get them to all play in my tournament. And so at the end of the day, the reason that it exists is because the TO is providing something to the players that's worth playing for, and therefore it's worth watching if you're an audience member because there's high stakes. Now, what you noticed is that I threw in it's worth watching to the audience. When things like this happen, I mean, Night Shift's view count got cut in half because of this, like, because of the, while, like, this whole, like, pause Urn fiasco was going on this week. It's not worth watching. There's no way to say this without making it sound like very pretentious, but it's like you're sitting there watching it, man. You're like, okay, man, do I need to sit here and watch this too? Like, I kind of, not insulted, but like my time is being wasted by sitting here and watching this. I came here to watch Deadlock, and like AVG was saying, this isn't Deadlock. And so, yeah, you do need to draw that line somewhere. We've talked about it now so many times at this point. That's why rules do exist. And yeah, just the line is being drawn on a week-by-week basis. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, they only exist because, yeah, viewers are watching, and that's what gets sponsors to come in and do stuff. But the viewers are watching because the players are there playing. And so it's a balance that they need to weigh between catering to the players who are playing the video game and maybe playing it in an unintended way, which I know that also your comment, I'm kind of twisting your comment into being about this week. You wrote it before this week, but I think it's kind of oddly applicable still. At a certain point, the viewer is watching because they want to watch you play Deadlock. There aren't 1,000, but yeah, so it is a little bit of a chicken before the egg situation, but at the end of the day, the viewers are there because the players are there playing and making it worth their time. And when it kind of shifts between, is this actually worth my time? I'm sitting here watching them not even really play Deadlock. They're podcasting with the Urn. That becomes the question of, okay, that's where Night Shift needs to step in, and that's why they did ban that strategy if they were going to play again, but Floormen decided that they did not want to continue the best of 3 after that. And so yeah, guys, that's where we're at the end of this week. Quite an eventful week. If you do want to stay in the loop, obviously be sure to subscribe, and throughout the week, guys, you can catch me on Twitter and Discord. By Twitter, it's kind of like I'm way better at Twitter than I am at YouTube, guys. Follow me on there. I'm like, we're cooking on Twitter. I don't know. But yeah, guys, I hope you have a great day. I will see you guys again next time, and peace.